Okay, so we were really interested in finding out what organizations offer to their early career professionals to give them this insight into the industry. So we asked what kind of initiatives their employers have in place. You will see that most employers, around 70%, 71%, have funds in place for early career professionals to attend industry meetings like this one and other networking events. And about 62% of employers have funds in place for them to participate in professional development opportunities, whether that's on-site at a meeting or elsewhere. We wanted to point out, though, that some of the benefits that are less known about in organizations are social media seminars, networking best practices, and public speaking seminars. And what's interesting is that those three things are probably most important when you're attending a meeting like this. You need to be able to network and follow along on Twitter, and if you're like us, you get to be on a panel and public speak. So really, some employers are not equipping their early career professionals well enough, even though they're sending them to do these opportunities. So we had an open text option for this question, and a lot of people said they don't know what their company offers. So shame on employers. They should be more vocal about what they can offer early career professionals. That's on both. I mean, employers should make it known what they offer, and you as an early career professional should seek it out and ask and find out. We were also disturbed by a few other quotes that are listed here, that some early career professionals don't feel like they are supported in getting professional development training, that they know maybe funds are there, but they're not really used, that they're not encouraged by the company. You must be selected by upper management to attend, and those opportunities are few and far between. So we wanted to point that out too, that you should be as supportive as possible in developing your early career professionals. So we also asked about webinars, because those have become much more popular as time goes on, and it's a great way to get information about the industry without having to travel and spend that kind of money. So we found that almost 70% of early career professionals have attended a webinar, and that most of the time they attended free of cost. Either their company paid for the webinar or the webinar was just free, so they didn't have to pay for it. However, ideally, employers would fund these kinds of opportunities 100% of the time. We understand that budgets are tight and sometimes it's difficult, but these are great opportunities for early career professionals to get information without actually having to leave the office. We got a lot of feedback on this question too in our open text, and we wanted to share that most early career professionals feel that their company should pay for it. The bottom line is we're poor. That's just the truth. And while we didn't go into this industry to make money, so while we're really interested in that kind of information, and we're really passionate about being in this industry and finding more information, really early career professionals don't feel in a position to pay for it themselves. So a little bit more about webinars. We asked what value early career professionals have on different resources and what's most useful for them. Webinars didn't rate as high. The most important ones were training opportunities and industry news. So this is just a little bit more information about how SSP outreach efforts are most useful, and it seems like most early career professionals find the online content that they can access on a regular basis to be most useful. So we also asked what is most important in terms of career objectives and what really motivates early career professionals. And they rated upward movement opportunities and professional development training very high, which is something that SSP can really help with. Something that employers should pay attention to, though, are that some of the most important career objectives, or the most important things to them in their career at this time, are having job stability, having a positive work environment, an interesting workload, and salary is also important. We asked what early career professionals hope to gain from their engagement with SSP or other organizations like SSP. Number one, obviously, was professional development and training. People really value this meeting and the work that SSP does for those opportunities. So we asked about skills. What skills do early career professionals feel are the most useful for them to obtain over the next 10 years in the course of their career? We learned that technology and management, different kinds, either project management or people management, were the most important ones. We also broke this down by different demographics of age groups to see if that information would change, and it did. So for early career professionals with only 0 to 2 years of experience, they valued things like communications, networking, presentation skills, and project management much higher than the other age demographics did. But you can see they value networking 11% more, presentation skills, project management, and communications around 9% more. So those are things that you can really foster if you're an employer for people who are entry level and just coming into the business. This stat didn't change too much for people with 2 to 5 years of experience, but then we also looked at the demographic of 5 to 10 years of experience, and by far the most important skill they felt was actually having people management. Project management went down, regular management and financial skills both went up by about 5%. And sadly, we heard this quote, which was really sad. I don't even know what skills I need to develop. So that shouldn't be the case, especially if you have someone who's really, dedicated and passionate about the industry, wants to stay in it and wants to be developed. It is both their job and your job, if you're an employer, to help them realize what skills are important and maybe fund them coming to things like this and learning about it. Okay, so those were the top stats that we wanted to share with you. We wanted this to be more of a narrative instead of just going question by question. So that's what we pulled out to be what we felt was the most interesting. But we really wanted to have a lot of time for question and answer, and we have a great group of panelists who are here for that purpose. So we just wanted to start with a question from us directed at them. They've all had a chance to review the data and talk about this in advance. So we were wondering if you wanted to share what most surprised you about this information, or what were some of your big takeaways from it?
Go ahead. You can start with the line.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's on. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I'm Terry Tolini, and I'm with Wiley in the journals division, and thank you guys so much for inviting me to come. I really appreciate it. I guess I wasn't really sure what the audience would be for this panel, and so I'm like realizing that there are a lot of mid-career people here like me, so I think what I imagined I might say is different from what I think I will say, and I guess what surprised me is that people care, that people are thinking about what they want their career to be. I don't know about all of you guys, but maybe by a show of hands, who knew what you wanted to do 20 years ago? I had no idea. Did anyone know? Okay, good for you. Was it publishing? Publishing. Oh, okay, book publishing. Okay. So I guess I'm impressed that people, my approach to my career was like, I was an educated person, just like everybody else. Beggars can't be choosers. I don't know if it was like the way I was raised or if it was just the time, but I kind of felt like, people who wanted to be in finance or business or banking or something, they knew what they wanted, but I was like, I'm in the humanities and I think I'll go teach in China and I think I'll get a job taking dictation at a university for a senior professor because I like being around these kinds of people. So I think it's great that people now entering the field are much more conscious. I think it's probably part of a generational shift too. And I have a son who's 10 and I'm thinking I want him to think about what he wants to do with his life, but not to the extent that he's feeling pressured to do that. I still feel like I don't know. I said this to you guys earlier. I don't know what I want to do, but I wish that I had started treating this like a career earlier than I did. And so I think that's what it doesn't surprise me, I guess, so much as like it's really noteworthy that people are expressing that this is what they want and expect. And I think in order for our industry to grow and become more diverse and to do all the things that like the keynote speaker this morning, is talking about, to really develop people, I think it's really important that SSP is stopping to think about this issue. So I guess that's my overall observation. Congratulations to everybody who's thinking about this as a career, and congratulations to SSP for really wanting to engage in that question.
Can I ask how many people in the audience consider themselves early career professionals? Myself. And how many people are managing early career professionals? I guess my response to that would be that was like the lie that got fed to a lot of my age group. I'm sort of an old millennial. I'm at the front end of that wave. And I always, when people found out that I ended up in publishing, they were like, oh, you must be like a failed academic of some kind. And I was like, well, basically, yeah. Like I realized academia sucked and I left, and sorry, that was not the most professional English. Was not so great, not suited to me, and I left. And everyone's like, yeah, like if publishing is that space that you sort of fall into. Like I didn't know it. I was one of the people who had no idea it was a field, had no previous experience, had no interest, no awareness. So I was astonished to see that the number was that high of people like who do know, which I think is, to your point, really, really good. But your 10-year-old is going to be doing a job that like we can't even conceive of sitting here, I hope. Yeah. So I think that's kind of part of the, I don't know if SSP as an organization, is it thinking about we want to go and actively pursue, the best of the best, the way banking does, or the way finance does, or the way some of these other industries do.
I confess that there were moments like over the last 10 years, maybe the earlier part of that phase, where people would call me from alumni associations or whatever and say, I'm interested in publishing, and I would think, are you insane? Didn't your parents, my parents didn't know what to say to me, but I think now I feel much more hopeful, and I think, there are the field is changing in so many interesting ways, and so yeah, their jobs, acquisitions, jobs and books, maybe very few, will continue to exist in the way that they did, but there will be other really interesting things like what Sarah does, that will be coming forth, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things I found more quite interesting about the survey results is kind of tracking the trajectory between when we divided it out between 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5, and then the 5 to 10, like where along the line some of those skill sets and needs fall. And we found predominantly that after year 2, at least this was in the case with some of the information that I was evaluating, individuals surveyed are more likely to list a role or an organization as their biggest challenge compared to before in 0 to 2 years where they would be unclear about their career path. So it seems as if there's that 2-year threshold where if you can hold on to and develop the skills and kind of importance and needs within scholarly communications very early on and do that before year 2, you may have someone who's looking at upward mobility at that point already. And then furthermore along those lines, and again, these are just very important things that I found to be kind of refreshing or something that was engaging for me specifically, is that networking, as they go, they seem to find, early career professionals have seemed to find not less of a need for, but placed less emphasis on the networking aspect. Obviously, there's a need for networking throughout the whole career, but as you go and you get used to networking with people, you become more comfortable. These are all kind of common trajectories that we can expect ourselves, even as early career professionals or mid-year professionals, if you will, as to how they would engage with audiences or kind of coworkers, if you will. So that was another interesting point.
If you guys could talk into the mic, it's going to get picked up in the recording.
Okay.
Better.
Thank you.
Even though it's a small room.
Good. Okay, that works. So I think I completely agree with Nick's points, and I really enjoyed seeing how the trends were changing as people were moving on with their careers. And there was definitely, so there was a bias because we did ask people to identify themselves with either 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, or 5 to 10 years. So we definitely had some impact on data, but I did feel like there was a strong difference for people with really just brand new to the industry. But the key point for me was the impact of colleagues and the hunger to learn. And I was really encouraged to see how much this group just wanted to be involved. And wanted to be involved, sometimes it was more passively by just reading blogs and newsletters and by just reading what was getting in their mailbox, but they really just wanted to be connected, to stay connected, to learn about the industry, and they all put a really big the emphasis, thank you, on their colleagues. And I think that's really a big takeaway for the room today, is the impact that each one of you can have on bringing the early career professionals in your groups, in showing them, oh, there's this interesting blog in Scholar Kitchen. Again, I'm biased, SSP, but it could be any other blog, or here's a newsletter that you should read on a regular basis. And I think we each have a responsibility to really give them those resources because they want it. The data show that they clearly want it, and they rely on us, their colleagues, to give them those tools.
Yeah, if I could just to comment quickly on the kind of social media aspect, because it was notable, if you will, that colleagues are the main kind of conduit through which people would, or early career professionals would actually engage with the industry on topics or any sort of kind of points, if you will. So why is it, if you will, is social media so low on the early careers kind of usage list? Like, why is it that we could assume such things? And the only possible thing that I could come up with, because I myself tweet fairly regularly, and I try to stay engaged how often as I can, but I also came from an industry where I worked up to a certain point and I had a lot more free time. And in that free time, like in this certain position, I had some time to kind of like draft longer emails. I had some time to really give some strategic thought. I recently migrated into a position where I don't necessarily have that kind of luxury or free time. So I think it's important to keep in mind that when we're kind of looking at social media engagement, you may not have an early career professional who's very new in an entry-level position, just like in a hypothetical sense, may not have that kind of luxury. So it's really important for companies and institutions like SSP specifically to really not only encourage companies to ingrain within their company culture the use of professional development through these webinars and seminars, but also to kind of make it a kind of standard opportunities for growth. Have maybe even some time carved out throughout the day where you're telling the person, hey, spend 30 minutes to an hour just kind of, checking on industry resources, keeping in touch, doing what you need to do to read articles and stay engaged, because that is provenly going to move them along further.
I wanted to sort of jump in. I think what struck me most about some of the findings was we talk about professional development. I don't know what that means, but what I definitely saw from the beginning of my career to the point where I was hiring people that were, fresh out of school, early career people, potentially massive potential to be major contributors, as they matured. What astonished me was their lack of skill, of knowing what skills they needed, and then the fact that they did not have managers to tell them, like, what is networking? Like, yeah, networking is like getting drinks, but like there is a bit, there is a sort of strategic way of thinking about that. If you're using social media in your job, how is that supposed to be done strategically? What is the appropriate way to address colleagues when you view yourself as junior in a room of people who are more senior? How are you dressing when you come to work? Flip-flops should be burned. Whatever the culture is at your organization, but I was astonished by the number of, some people have a natural knack for those things and they just pick them up, and others really need to be sat down and said, like, 50 Post-it notes all over your door is not a to-do list. Like, that's not a way of managing. One of my first hires, I really had a very hard time doing multiple projects at the same time, and trying to sit down and give her guidance as to how, you can't think of, I will finish A and then I will commence with B and then I will do, like, that's not the way our jobs work anymore. And so for someone to say, I don't know what skills I need to develop, I mean, I guess you're supposed to come out of college with these skills, but I don't know that happens. That's where I mean, 'cause I think there are a lot of managers in the room. It's really incumbent upon us to look and say, this is what's really strong, this is where there's a lot of potential, but this is where you need to fill the gaps. And, like, I don't know that pointing them to the webinar is the way to do that. There's got to be a bit of TLC, which is massively time-consuming, but good managers do, and much of what I've achieved is because people like Terry, like good mentors, have sat me down and been like, you can't go into a meeting and say that, Sarah, or, don't be mad at the IT guy and expect him to fix your computer, like some basic, like, things, So that I would sort of put out to the managers in the room, because I had fantastic managers who did that for me, and I've tried to do the same with the people that I hire, so. That's my soapbox I want to get on today.
Thank you.
Check that one off.
We want to have some time to take questions from the room. We have
15 minutes?
about 15 minutes left, so please come on up. Yes.
Hey, I'm Rick Anderson. I'm the incoming president of SSP, and in that capacity, I want to hijack this program for 2 seconds. And please invite all of the early career professionals who are here in this room and anybody else who who is here to please come to the Get Involved luncheon at 12:30 in the Marine Room. We're going to be talking about ways that you can get involved with SSP as committee members and other voluntary capacities. I can tell you that it is a tremendously useful way to build your career, getting involved with SSP committees. And so my excuse for throwing that out here is that it fits in here. But I just wanted to put that sort of red carpet invitation out there to any of you, especially those of you who are in your early careers. Thanks.
So it's perfect, and I'll just point out the status stat to me. So I'm also on the board of SSP, and when I saw the stat about the value of being involved in a committee with SSP, and I got a little teary. About 14% of the survey participants chose it as something that was important, as a skill and as a way to advance their career. And it's unfortunate that it's the perception, because anyone involved in a committee, volunteering for an organization like SSP, will gain so much just in terms of growing your network, growing your skill set, and just understanding the industry that's around you. And thanks for the plug, Rick, because it's really the saddest part of the survey.
But again, that becomes known because somebody tells you that, And if you're not being told that, I had an SSP education committee person sit down with me when I given some feedback after going to, like, my second librarian focus group. And I was telling them, I think this could be better. They're just like, well, why don't you just join the committee? And, like, that had never occurred to me to do, and I did, and that has been huge for career development. But we need people to tell us.
Yeah,
I think that's something that when we're going through the data and we had the question of what organizations, what employers have certain initiatives in place for them, and you have to remember that the question is getting their opinion of what they believe is in place. And we were tossing back and forth, like, 70% have funds for outreach programs. Should it be 100, or is that 70% pretty good? It's a give and take. But the idea that even if those programs even if it is 100%, if only 70% know about it, then essentially only 70% offer it.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that. My name's Alison Beal, and I'm with the University Press, and we spent 2015 doing sort of a holistic strategic review and planning process, and we included surveying everyone about how they feel about are we a continuous learning organization? Do we encourage innovation? Do you get the training and support you need? And all of us who were managers and directors were really surprised by people saying, no. It's a mystery if there's funds. It's a mystery how to get the funds. And all of us who manage those budgets were in there and we're like, we have the budget. We make the budget available. And I thought they knew how and what to do. to get a hold of it. So we realized that we needed to do a lot of training and coaching around, one, we had to do some more communication to let it be known that there were funds, but also to teach them how to bring ideas to us. And so I noted the piece where they were saying, I have to make a case for it. There's a good version of making a case for it, and then there's a bad version of making a case for it, but people have to be taught how to make the case for it. So that was my comment. I have a question, which is, did you happen to survey on any question of upward mobility along the lines of, were you able to achieve upward mobility within the organization you started with, or did you have to change organizations?
We actually didn't have a question looking through that. It was mostly looking at professional development, and as you said, kind of like it's a very vague idea. But no, that was one thing we wish we, looking back, had included in the survey.
Well, can I, another slight, small soapbox, tiny soapbox.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I found with managers and sort of the various aspects that I've done it is, I think you have to be upfront when there is no real mobility in a role. I got hired at my very first job, being told there was. Within 6 months was like, that wasn't true, right? And the person who hired me got very frustrated because within 6 to 8 months of that being hired, I stopped working for him to work for someone else because I saw an opportunity that I wanted and went after it. And this guy has now spent, you know how long it takes to train and onboard someone, and then now they're gone. And literally, the word around the office is, we're not hiring another person like Sarah again, because we need a workhorse, we don't need a thoroughbred, whatever it is, however you want to put it. And I think it helps to be honest. I was lucky that I was able to move, but some places, you're going to move every 2 years because there's nowhere within your organization due to the size or the structure or the culture. I think we should be honest about that. Second.
Hi.
Yes.
Ginger Strader, Smithsonian Scholarly Press. I'm just wondering if there's any discussion about a survey of mid-career professionals and managing editors, hiring managers specifically, to see if there's any overlap in what young early career professionals care about and what hiring managers need.
Well, we had intended to include something like that in the survey, that we were going to get your age, and if you didn't fall into what we defined as an early career professional, we would then ask if you were a manager or a hiring manager, and then you'd be asked some questions. It got to be a lot, so we did not do that. And I know there's been a lot of surveys going around, but I think that would be really valuable, because I would bet that most mid-level or managers would want to support their early career professionals or the people that they're hiring and training, and I can't see why they wouldn't, but they're also hitting roadblocks too, so that would be very useful.
And that goes to the generational shift you mentioned.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know, if there is a real difference in the expectations.
I think it's a really interesting question because, just this panel, this session alone, there's so many, so much attention to early career professionals. There's no middle management task force out there right now doing the same thing. And what we were kind of finding,
Everybody's too depressed.
Yeah. And what we found with the data is that, I think we had an expectation of social media and technology, and I think that's almost a myth, is that those tools and early career professional archetypes are supplemental to who they are as colleagues and people. We're all essentially the same colleagues in the same industry, and every one of us was, or still is, or at some point was an early career professional. So what is the line that we draw? How do you make this distinction between an early career professional or middle management? Do you stop becoming an early career professional right when you start managing someone? Probably not. And the idea is that all our objectives are very similar in the sense of, early career professionals want professional development. That doesn't mean no one else doesn't want it. It's a similar trait that we all seek. And so I guess my question for the panel would be, how do we discern this? There's been so many talks this week about, I'm a mentor and I was a mentee, but you never stop becoming a mentee. How do we distinguish what an early career professional is? Is it 5 to 10 years, or I'll let you run with it?
I don't know. I'll throw something. I think it's probably impossible to distinguish. I mean, I still feel, so Alice Meadows is walking out right now. She is one of the people who, sorry, Alice. I'm pointing you out because I know you do. Sorry. I didn't mean to say it that way. Keep going. I'll talk about you when you're out of the room. But, so Alice is someone, right? So we work together at Blackwell and then at Wiley, and she is someone who said to me, so I'm 47 years old. So when I was in my early 40s, she said, when I was in my early 40s, I realized I needed to get my act together and start getting myself out there. And so in that sense, I still feel like an early career professional. Because I was thinking to myself, this were an audience of early career professionals, I would say shop for your boss, because I didn't do that. And
Absolutely.
I did not do that. I didn't know enough to do it. And for a long time, I think I sort of languished. And then people like Alice said to me, you've got to get your act together. But this isn't really to your question, Matt, but I'm kind of thinking, so the point that you made just a minute ago about is really, really important. And I think, though, that it's like a double-edged sword. So don't take this the wrong way, because it's not personal to anyone. But I think there is this sense among, like, the people, when I get together with my friends who are like the same stage in the industry, sometimes the conversation is like, who do these kids think they are? And I mean, seriously, and I think I need to tell myself to get over that, because those kids are what I should have been 20 years ago if I had had the wherewithal, the education, the mentoring that I needed. So I think there is that sense of like, you've got to be a mentor, but you've also got to be learning at the same time to be, to take people from where they're coming, and to accept that, and to say, you know what, instead of being bitter about that or angry, or being frustrated by that, I say, what an amazing thing that this person knows what they want, or at least knows how to ask for something. So I don't know, I just sort of like musing, I guess. But I think that, I think there is that thing that maybe you wouldn't want to talk about in this kind of situation, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, which is there is that like kind of element of like, get over yourselves, but I need to push past that.
Yeah, I can certainly see there being a kind of evolution of learning and kind of experience within scholarly publishing. You start in one segment, and suddenly, like for instance, I have let's see, I've been in the industry now for a little over 6 years, still technically in the early career umbrella, and I would say that I'm just now really coming into what I identify as really key kind of what's my word for it? Kind of roles or responsibilities or kind of skill sets that I think will be valuable on a kind of longer term, if you will. I've served in roles of like administration. I've served in roles of kind of management of like a board liaison type role. I've been in kind of a financial / publishing role, and now I'm just kind of coming into like a project management role. So I've seen kind of this strange trajectory. I haven't necessarily committed to one thing or another, and I'm still not completely certain that this is where I'm going to start kind of keep ending up. So I see it very much as an evolution of kind of processes, and maybe early career doesn't exist in a certain time period, but rather certain kind of signposts, if you will.
And just to be clear, I actually wondered about this question a lot when we were designing the survey, and when we decided to put that mark at 10 years. Did it make sense? So like, I've been in the industry for 15 years, and do I qualify as early career? When I think about it, I still have a good 30 years to go. So yes, I'm still at the beginning of my career, and I still have a lot to figure out in terms of where I'm going. So I think it's it's a moving target in a lot of ways.
Oh, I think a lot of it too is identifying someone that you would like to be or would like to sort of emulate, whether it's their skills or their trajectory or how they go about doing their job, and glomming onto them if they're willing to let you glom. I had that as someone who'd been only doing the job for 3 or 4 years, but I was astonished eating in a restaurant one day. A 20-year-old consultant intern came up to me and was like, I've been seeing what you've been doing, and I just want you to know, like, I'd really like to learn from you. Like, she came up to me, I had no idea who she was, and she took that incredible initiative to just like go up to a stranger, and from then on, like, we've had a relationship going forward. And I don't have that much more experience than her, but she saw something that she wanted to emulate, and I've had been lucky to have the same thing. And And so I think that's how you do it.
I see things that you're doing and I want to emulate them. I mean,
Yeah,
really. So I think it's kind of, watching you tweet, like, I don't know. But I think there is something, the learning can go both ways.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, sadly, we're out of time. We wish we could keep talking about this, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our lovely panelists and everyone on our task force. They're up on the screen right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Can I just leave the audience with one thing to take with you in your infinite free time? How many of you are at organizations where people stay somewhere in the 0 to 5 year range, and then or they stay 30 years, but they don't stay in the middle? That is a question to mull over and do another panel on, about why can't organizations keep those early career folks. And I think the middle management question plays a big part into that, and I think that'd be a really interesting conversation to have.
And the opportunities.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And while I have a microphone, I also want to say thank you to Matt and Emma.
Yeah.
They've done a fantastic job at really
Thank you guys.
putting together the stats, the information, and making the tools very easy for us to read
Yeah,
them. So thank you very much to them.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.